Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I am Rob. This is my State of the Dungeon address. This was for the game played on the 13th of June, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, closing sessions of Princes of the Apocalypse, but not the end of the action. Not by any stretch. When last we played, the group had gotten finished beating the Prophet of Elemental Earth, our friend Marlos Urnrail. They finally killed him, put his forces to rout, and closed the Earth portal. And there was much rejoicing. Their allies were all ecstatic that the Earth menace was gone. The Resistance, who had been operating in the area, helped mop up the last of the cultists. There's really no more Earth cult presence left. They're very happy about that. They did a number of things in preparation for the next step. Primarily talking to the Lich Renwick, who dwelt in the Sacred Stone Monastery. He was a valuable source of information to them at this point, considering that he had seen these cults before, and now that they had closed the Earth Portal, he knew it, because he'd been studying the Earth Portal and the Earth Seed for as long as, well, first of all, for the various incarnations of it, and when Marlos stumbled into the Seed and reactivated it, and he could notice the power that was swelling. He couldn't help but notice it. And it furthered his studies quite a bit. So when the group caught up with him, his idea was, well, the Earth Portal is closed, and now it's closed permanently. There's no opening that back up again without starting all over again to scratch, basically. One of the problems with this elemental cult breakout in the valley was that every time the prophets would come back, because these wounds were still there, the portals were still there, they were never properly closed. So when Marlos and all of the others eventually found their weapons and were, talked to by the princes of elemental evil, they didn't have as much to do. They just gather up followers, which was relatively easy from the powers they were able to demonstrate, teach them the secrets, which basically made all of these different cultists with different powers, and hold on tight, keep doing the kind of things that they're told to do so that they can bring in their prince into the world and destroy it in their own unique ways. Thereby satisfying whatever goals and desires they had. So when they finally killed Marlos, unlike all the other times that these cults had been beaten in history, they took Iron Fang and they figured out how to seal the portal permanently, which caused the Black Geode, the Earth Seed, to kind of rupture, and they got out as that node completely closed. So they know how to do it now, sort of. And Renwick is like, well, there's really nothing keeping me here anymore, because I have a feeling that this place is going to be occupied again, and I don't want to have to deal with new neighbors, so I'm going to go find some other place. But I'd like you to get me access to my brother's body. He's buried in the bottom of Summit Hall, which is, by the way, run by Paladins of Hyronius, who don't like the undead very much, to put it mildly. And Antaeus, their paladin, said, we'll work on it. Renwick has generally shown that he is not evil. He doesn't have evil intentions. He has helped the group willingly and without having to be paid ridiculous amounts. He didn't like the cults and understood the dangers that they posed, so he gave the party some help passively, which was all that they really needed. They took care of the rest for themselves, and now he was getting ready to leave. He basically assisted the party with their training, gathered trainers, or was able to teleport them to places where they could get training and provide the means to come back, which was useful. Also, because I'm a little bit Monty Hallish, I offered the players another option that they could have. They could, because they had closed the portal, there was still a scar on reality. Hello, Magic. Say hi to everybody, Magic. This is Magic, my kitty. She's very affectionate today. Because they had closed the portal abruptly, there was now a scar on reality. The boundary between their world and others was really thin at that point. And he could seal it, but it would be easiest to do it by connecting it to another realm. So he offered to do so because it was going to further his own magical studies. He had contemplated the idea before, and he let them pick the realm. Which, when the others were really they were like, wait a second, you're just going to connect our world to another? Isn't that very dangerous? His response is, well, I could have connected it to the Shadowfell, the plane of undeath and shadows, and made myself more powerful and never told you. So I'm giving you a choice here. And they debated on, the optimal place to do this to. And they fell upon the Feywild, which is a plane of creation and energy and fairy magic. For various reasons, but for the most part, their hope was that it was going to make the lands more fertile and be generally a nice place to connect their world to, with an input of energies that they could agree with. So Renwick was like, okay, we can do this. I will need power. So I will take your two casters, I will have them cast their spells into my apparatus, which will take the energies and will cement the boundary between. And that would mean that he wanted Geth to fire off all of his lightning magics into his device, and Brock to fire off every spell he knew for just raw power. And everybody was agreeable to that. The rest of the party he had stand around the area to defend them in case they were attacked, because it was going to leave Renwick in a very vulnerable position casting the spell. But they did that, and they started commencing, and something came through the portal. It was an Eldarian knight. He was a paladin in service to the Queen of the Winter Court, and was not pleased with the idea that they were just going to forge this connection. There were no treaties signed. This had not been hashed over. This is just another example of primes doing whatever they wanted to do, which was unacceptable, and he offered them combat. The group found him to be a tough opponent. He had several attacks. His sword was very magical. His armor was pretty tough, but they basically teamed up and laid the smackdown on him. And he respected, after they bloodied him, he kind of felt that he had to accept their claim. And it didn't hurt that at the very end of it, they finished the spell and the bond was formed. So now it's not really a gate because there's still a barrier, but it's a very weak side that energies from the Feywild can flow in this underground area at the Fane of the Eye. Which will be really interesting because the other places aren't closed down yet. So, yeah. So they go back to their training and everything. They come to an understanding that it would be a good idea to maybe get some sort of defenses there. The court is going to have to decide if they want to put up a settlement there for trade purposes. At the very least, they'll have one for defense, some sort of an outpost, which they're not terribly opposed to. Allows them to stretch out their power a little bit more, so they're okay with it. Plus, every once in a while, it's useful for them to have access to the Prime Plane, too. And if they can get an enlightened trading partner on the other side, that can make things much easier for them. So, that went well. The other thing that came through the portal was I rolled again randomly. As far as a threat, this thing was a 2 out of 100. Not a threat at all. So I decided it was going to be cute. So I rolled randomly, and what came through the portal was a pigicorn. A butterfly-winged pig with a unicorn-like horn. That flew out and was immediately, it went to Brock. That didn't go well. It went around to the different groups of the parties. The only one who was happy to see this pigicorn was the monk Oriana. And he's like, kind of liked her. Her elemental powers were cool. And so now they're fast friends. I believe she named him Petunia. Or her. So she's got a Pigacorn now. It has shown off that it has the ability to teleport short distances, and it is endearing and oinks. And communicates by oinking. So they decided to that in the future they were going to try to figure out if they were going to flood the entire valley with energy from the Feywild, any other scars that they create by shutting down the other nodes, they would also have. They were thinking about making another similar seal, and the ability to contact Renwick to come and make that with them. Renwick's suggestion was to make gates to different planes to balance out the powers, so that they could kind of have a way station between different realities and make this a center of learning, so that people could come to this valley to try to get a grasp of knowledge throughout the planes and understanding of reality. So he suggested they have one to the Shadowfell, one to the Feywild, one to the Ethereal, and then maybe an outer plane, although those were dangerous. Maybe the Astral Plane, since there are a few stationary points in the Astral Plane. We'll see what they come up with when we get to that point, and they're not there yet. So, they finished their leveling, they got a little bit of experience for all of this, but basically it was a night spent going out and doing the kind of things that they really needed to do to make their next push. They then were given the last gift by Renwick, which was a mechanical construct dragon. Not something primarily used for combat, it was to get them from point A to point B. Which was useful to them, wasn't so useful to Renwick anymore. Also, it kind of had a thing where they could only fly in it so many times and it would vanish on them and would go to somebody else. So they decided they were going to take it to go and visit the Myconid colony that Auric and several of the others who had passed had bonded with. And they met the Myconids, who were very happy to see them. They came into a place that was resurging with energy and power because with the Earth cult gone, they weren't getting poisoned and tainted anymore, and they were in really bad shape prior, so this recovery was very welcome. They were greeted well. They met up with the overseer of the colony, who is a silver dragon, herself bonded with the Myconids, and crusted with mushrooms, and having not only the power of a mature dragon, but also a communion with thousands of these Myconids as their queen. And they were offered benefits befitting those who would, strike out against the cults, because she knew that their job wasn't done yet. Just the most dangerous ones, the Myconids, were gone, but even that deserved a reward. So they give out healing mushrooms. Instead of healing potions, they got mushrooms. And other abilities that they had tied down to. All in all, it was a good visit, but fairly quickly they realized they had to keep going. It started to rain nonstop. It wasn't good. So they flew off to the river that cuts the valley in half. And they went to the Riverguard Keep, which is now controlled by the resurging former prisoners of the Earth Cult, led by the psychic Cyclops Magnus. And they realized they didn't want to go through the tunnels and everything. They figured that since there was a dragon turtle that had gotten into the lake, there had to be a dragon turtle-sized hole somewhere. So they went up the riverbed until they found it, and basically used their dragon to get all the way back up to the lake. So they are now inside the actual temple of elemental water. Next step is to go down into the Fane of the Eye and figure out how to get down into that geode so that they could try to stop the prophet of elemental water, Gar Shatterkeel. Fun fellow. The person who TPK'd the group once. So there's going to be some revenge factor in there, certainly. But he is not in the temple. He is in he is in the elemental seed of water, so they're going to have to go and root him out. Should be fun. This wasn't a lot of action, really. There was one good fight in the middle, but this was a preparation because they had been dungeon crawling, but they're going to have to go dungeon crawling again to get at Gar. So we're getting closer to the end of this campaign, and hopefully you've been enjoying the ride. I'm Rob. This has been my State of the Dungeon address. Thank you, and farewell.